guys, it's Holly, and I have a pretty large Lego collection, and not a lot of it is dust-free. In fact, there are a lot of things in my room right now that are incredibly dusty and that I probably should, go and deal with. So I thought it would be a great time to talk about ways I keep my Lego sets dust-free, how I dust them, and how I clean them, and just basically go over everything I do in order to upkeep my sets in the greatest condition that I can. I've tried a lot of different methods and I feel like I've got a pretty good routine going, so I wanted to share it with you all today. Dusting is definitely something I should probably do more regularly than I do, and I have actually made an entire video about this before, but I wanted to sort of give you an update and really talk you through all of my processes today. Also, just an FYI, I will leave all of the products that I mention in the description down below. Majority of them do come from Amazon and they'll be grouped by different countries. Firstly, I want to talk about probably the most, intense version of cleaning my Lego, and that is literally washing pieces. Now, this is something that I typically do whenever I buy a retired set. I buy a lot of them used, so for me personally, I want to clean them as soon as I get a hold of them, mostly just to, I feel like, get rid of dust, get rid of, any marks that might be on them for the most part, because some Lego is definitely a lot cleaner or in better kept condition than others, and I want everything to be the best I can. So while it's all broken down, I feel like that is the perfect time to go through and clean things, especially retired sets. I haven't personally washed any pick-a-brick. Then again, I don't really get a lot of pick-a-brick, but that is something as well that I would definitely probably recommend doing. You might even want to wash all of the BAM stuff. Again, I personally don't do that, even though I probably should. Now, when it comes to washing Lego, basically the easiest thing that I do is just pour all of the pieces into a giant mixing bowl, or even your family's popcorn bowl, something that is really, really giant. I just pour everything into that first. Then I mix it in with warm water so that way all of the bubbles form and the pieces will actually get cleaned. Now, I will sort of leave it to soak a little bit, and then I'll grab a spatula or a wooden spoon or even my hand sometimes and just sort of smush it around. If there's some pieces that have are dirtier than others, sometimes I'll even scrub them with the soft side of a sponge or something like that. But for the most part, just the water should be enough to get rid of any dust. I did this on the Great Hall once when it was really dusty. I just took the whole thing apart, washed it and rebuilt it. It was easier than dusting it, but most of the time I'll only really do this for any, new used sets that come into my possession. Then once all of the pieces are washed, I pour everything into a little sieve. That way there's no sort of small studs that might fall out or go down the drain or anything like that. And then I rinse all of the pieces to get the leftover water and just soapy water off, because I don't want any of the bubbles to dry down onto the bricks. So I'll give it a good rinse and sort of shake it around, let all of the water sort of sit down. Then once I've sort of stopped running the water, I'll shake the sieve again just so that the rest of the water can drip down. And then I put it on a pot pan, drying mat. There's a couple of these that exist. I know my mum personally has two, so I just lay them out on the table. You could also always use a beach towel or just a regular towel or even a tea towel if the set's quite small, but you just want to put it onto a surface that can absorb water easily. Also, if you've got any lights or specifically quite a hot room in the house, you'd probably want to put it in there. That way all of the pieces can dry a lot easier. When I also lay them out on these mats, often I will grab a tea towel and sort of dab the tops of them. Some bricks as well, you might need to rotate them just to get all of the water out, kind of shake a couple of things, especially if there's a tube, just so that everything dries perfectly. Usually I'll leave the pieces out to dry for maybe a day or two. I mean, it depends on when my mum starts to yell at me for leaving Lego on the table, and then I just put everything back into plastic bags or into plastic containers ready to be built. The only time I feel that would be really necessary for a dusting strategy though is if you have had something, sat out for 5+ years and it has got the thickest coating ever. Honestly, it's going to be easier to take the set apart than just, I feel use any of these other dusting techniques if it's been a really, really long time. Otherwise, I don't really think you need to go to that extent. Also, while I learned the hard way when my sticker sheet for the Eternal set fell into the pool that Lego stickers are pretty waterproof, I would definitely recommend sort of taking any stickered pieces, especially any fabric pieces, out and then just hand cleaning it. Even rubber pieces, I usually don't really put in the bowl. I'll just clean them separately. I'll sort of rinse through them, give them a little wipe down, and that will be it. Now, before I talk about how I dust like the rest of my sets, I want to talk about some of the things I do to try and protect majority of my sets. Now, the main thing is basically get a cabinet like I do with some glass doors. Now, I ideally would love to have a wall of these cabinets all filled with a bunch of doors just to help protect the dust. This definitely isn't a dust-free cabinet. This is just from IKEA. It's the Billy bookcase with the Oxburg doors. However, it does a really good job at keeping the dust out. I feel like I only really need to go in there maybe like once every 6 months to a year and just like wipe down the shelves, maybe just give like a little brush over the sets. For the most part, the Lego stays very, very clean and it has been a lifesaver. I usually put just like any of my favorite sets in there, or sometimes if I'm like sort of rotating through my sets or I've like got a bunch of stuff to review but really don't have space to store anything, in order to keep it dust free, I will just sort of shove it in that cabinet temporarily because of the fact that it's just a lifesaver. Otherwise, if you're just storing sets, plastic storage containers are the biggest lifesaver. I've got tons of them in my storage unit just to protect all of the sets that I guess I've built but just don't have space to store, because I don't want things sort of sitting around getting dusty unless they are on display. The other method is acrylic storage cases. However, if you're like me and you have a lot of sets, like this is a very, very pricey solution unless there's like specifically maybe a couple or like some big D2Cs that you really feel like deserve it. I really enjoy these cases. They are a huge investment though in terms of just price because of, I guess, the materials and the processes made for them, but they are a lifesaver. The fact that I don't have to dust my Daily Bugle, my Hogwarts Castle, or my Great Hall ever again is fantastic. I recently had to grab the Great Hall out in order to make some videos. The fact that I could just pull it out of that case and like have it good to go was amazing for me, but also it means I can put it on display and not have to worry about it. I love them, but that is definitely, I feel like, a very like specific case. Don't really buy too many of them sort of situation if you've got a lot of sets. If you're just like a really big, I guess, like D2C or UCS collector, probably a bit more viable for you to buy multiple of them, but I feel like a mix between maybe shelf and like acrylic display case should be good. However, there are some places where I put sets where I feel like, you know, acrylic display cases don't really just work, so I do want to have them sort of out in the open, which of course means then I will have to dust them. Now, before I even think about dusting the set, what I will do is remove it from wherever it is, or at least in the Disney Castles case where the set's quite big, I will move it sort of around and dust off the shelf or platform that it is on. I don't want to put this like super clean set that I just dusted back onto a dirty shelf. First thing you do is dust your shelves. In order to do that, personally, I just grab like an old sock or like a microfiber cloth or something like that and just like wipe over it. That's really all I do. I don't feel like in a shelves case you necessarily need to like vacuum it or air compress it or things like that. Just sort of a wipe down works perfectly, I think, for me. Now, when it comes to the set itself, I feel like everyone's sort of got their own method. I've heard a lot of people talk about, I guess, air compressing. For me, and just the size of my collection, that's not gonna work, especially like doing it in this room. Just the dust is gonna go falling back into the air and then it's gonna just come right back down and I'm gonna be back where I started. I also then can't like take everything outside in order to use an air compressor. So for me, that's personally just not an option. However, I've heard it works wonders. Because the trick with dusting is you want to get rid of the dust. So personally, I use a combination of two methods. The first thing that I am a really big fan of is using a paintbrush or a makeup brush in order to dust off the sets. I mean, personally, I use makeup brushes just because I find the bristles are a lot softer, even if you buy a cheap brush, whereas if you buy a cheap paintbrush, usually the bristles are quite hard and you're not really gonna find that it does a good job. I feel like just go and get a makeup brush. They're so soft, so cheap. I'll leave some of the ones linked in the description below that I think would work really well. Personally, I use a combination of a different bunch of styles of makeup brushes. The first one you want is like an eyeshadow brush that is a lot smaller, because this will get into like all of the little tight areas of your set. You can then sort of like brush the dust out, which sort of gets it open into the air before you go in with a little vacuum, which I will get to, but definitely get a small like eyeshadow brush. Then you'd probably want a larger one. This one's a bit of like a wispy brush. Specifically, this is called a stippling brush, I believe. And then I feel like the best one alongside the eyeshadow brush is definitely a really big powder brush. This is gonna get over a lot of different surface area. Again, it's gonna pick up all of that dust so you can vacuum it up. Definitely get some in multiple sizes. I feel like really you only need 2 sizes, but it could be pretty helpful, I guess, to have 3. But yeah, makeup brushes over paint brushes just because the bristles are so much softer. They're also still relatively cheap. So once I've sort of gone over the set and like picked up a lot of the dust with the brush, which honestly does a pretty good job on its own, just to make sure that it doesn't fall back onto the set, I then use this handy dandy little keyboard vacuum that I got from Amazon. This thing has like two heads. The one I usually use on it to dust my sets is this one with like these little bristles. That way I feel like I'm not really damaging the bricks. However, there is sort of just like an angled slant one. Again, I will leave this linked in the description down below. This thing is fantastic. I can just charge it using a micro USB, so it doesn't take batteries or anything like that, and it's like a wireless keyboard vacuum, so I can just turn it on and like run it down all of my sets, and it picks up a lot of dust. I personally don't do this on any set that I feel like has like a really thick dust coating. To that, I would probably lean more towards like brushes first, just to sort of clean it up, get it a bit better before attacking it with the dust vacuum, or in some cases I would go the cleaning route. For most things, like just like light dust and things like that, this is a lifesaver. The only problem is you can't get into like every section, which is where the brushes come in. I really feel like you have to have a combination of things in order to get your Lego sets the cleanest they can be, but I highly recommend a like mini keyboard vacuum. Just make sure that you do clean it, like take the nozzle off, clean the inside, maybe run some water down it, and definitely as well clean the inside of this, like pop this thing off and clean that. Mine definitely needs a clean. Please do not lead by my example. And I guess for like any really large sets, maybe you could use like a handheld vacuum, like one of the Dysons or something like that, again with these soft bristles. Personally, I've never needed to use like a full-size vacuum. My keyboard vacuum has worked perfectly fine, but that is basically how I clean all of my Lego sets. Base plates, I just feel like just a sponge is perfectly fine and then dry it off. But like the rest of the stuff, really, you just need to have like some couple of handheld tools and make sure you do it regularly. I feel like that is the best piece of advice that I can give you. Don't let things sort of sit for a year or two and then try and dust them. You can definitely, I guess, for the most part, restore things back to its original condition, but especially sets that I guess are black, you can sometimes get like little like dust scratches on the bricks, so I would definitely pay more attention to them and just really go through and dust your sets every couple of months. And even, I guess, if you've got a lot of Lego like I do, rotate them in and out, I guess, of your shelving displays. That way, one is not really, I guess, sat collecting dust for a really long time. Of course, as well, do be careful when it comes to like the sunlight. For example, whenever I go on holiday, I make sure all of like my blinds and shutters are just completely shut so that my room is, I guess, as dark as possible. That way it's not sitting in the sun for as much. I guess in winter time when I'm cold and I have the blinds open for a lot, I usually only do it for a couple of hours a day. For me though, I've never really found the sun to be an issue, but I thought I would mention it anyway. And another thing that I did do to like one of my IKEA Kallax units, one of them I've got like a back panel that I've got in order to stop the dust and a front panel, so that sort of blocks things out in that one. But I've also got another Kallax unit which is still sort of under construction, that display, but I've put like a giant sheet of felt on the back of it so that dust like will be less likely, I guess, to come in, and then I want to put the panels on the front. And then in my other Kallax unit, what I did is I put like some felt on just some fabric on the back of it. That way, I guess the dust won't come through the back. And then I want to get panels to put on the front again, so the dust really can't get in, and just minimize as much of it as I can. Unless you're getting like dust-free like cabinets or I guess just display cases, chances are a couple of things will stick through, but as long as you really keep on top of things and, like I said, use a multitude of methods like brush dust off, then suck it up, you should be really good to go. I really hope that this helps you keep all of your Lego clean. I mean, there's nothing worse than just finding like a really thick dust coating on one of your sets. It happens to everyone. It happens to every single Lego collector. Hopefully one day I'll be able to get a bunch of cabinets to sort of reduce that problem, because right now I spend far too much time trying to keep them clean. But for now, these are all of the methods that I use, and I hope that this could help you. Again, I will leave everything linked in the description down below if you're interested, I guess, in getting one of these vacuums for yourself, or some of the makeup brushes, because I feel like majority of my audience, judging by my analytics, won't know where to start in that regard. But thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, consider subscribing to my channel down below, have fun cleaning your Lego, and until next time, I'll see you later.